Hello, I'm Rich Bialik, and welcome to the Bialik Group Report. Today, I'm pleased to be with Ike Anison, who's joining us on today's podcast. Ike, I consider a pioneer and leader in African payments and fintech. We spent about a decade together working at Global Technology Partners, and I want to introduce Ike, let him tell a bit more about his background and take us through his journey in payments and fintech in Africa. A really interesting background and truly one of my closest friends in the journey we took at GTP. So Ike, let me hand it over to you. And again, welcome. Thanks for joining me on what is a cold winter's day in Chicago. I think we're talking minus 28 with the wind chill, 28 centigrade. So warm me up, bring some of that warmth you have.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for the kind words. Truly, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And our time together at GTP was really, really wonderful. It was your leadership was basically part of the reason why GTP was able to get to where it was.
Thank you.
So I want to tell you that you should come over to Africa because it's warm. Rich is saying it's what minus whatever there. Here it's 30 something, it's always nice and warm here. So another reason why to invest in Africa.
I will do
Yeah.
that. I will be there.
So my journey, I started off as a banker and I worked in different departments in the bank. And then one day I was actually working close to the managing director of the bank I was working in then. I used to be in corporate affairs and things like that. And he told me that, look, there's this new thing starting called smart cards.
Mhm.
I said, smart cards, what's that? He said it's a new department that we're setting up. It's about electronic cards. I didn't have a clue what he was talking about.
Mhm.
And he said, do you want to join? I said, sure. Why not? I mean, it can't hurt. So I joined the department, and that was basically where it started. You have to be schooled on what is a card.
Mhm.
Then it wasn't the typical debit cards that you have now. It was more of an e-chip card where, you actually fund the chip on the card and
Right.
it was closed loop.
Mhm.
It wasn't, interoperable. But that was the beginning. And from there, we grew. And this was a time in Nigeria where we'd made some strides in ATM deployments, in interoperability between banks. You know, a few years later, we could do instant bank transfers. So I know for some of the American, listeners, they may not be able to move money from one side of the country to the other,
Mhm.
depending on what rails you use. But for us, that became, basically, doable. So, the technology really leaped in bounds. If you look at typically people crawl before they run,
Right.
we just sidestepped the crawling and just jumped to, even like the GSM technology as well, so which helped in the financial ecosystem. So that was where I started in cards. Then I, veered into other areas of electronic banking or digital banking in terms of, internet banking, mobile apps, and different things like that, where, you're able to support that. I did a stint in supporting ATMs. I was the head of the ATM unit where, that was when I realized that, bankers also like doctors. You're on call almost 24/7
Right.
because ATM can't go down. Someone has to basically attend to it. So I worked in different banks in different areas of digital banking, electronic banking, but always, products, developing the products, pushing the products out there. And it's really been an amazing journey to see how the solutions actually impact
Mhm.
people, ordinary people.
Right.
Because if you look at it, today, Rich, if you wanted to fly from where you are to Africa, you need to
Mhm.
buy a ticket, right? You need to pay for the ticket. You need to pay for a hotel room. You need to do so many things. Now, without electronic banking or digital payments, it would be very, very cumbersome for you to be able to do that. Extremely difficult. You're talking about cash, carrying cash with you all the way. I mean, so cumbersome, so risky. But and I think people sort of forget what digital, payments have done to lifestyle. So right now, I don't think about how I'm going to pay.
Right.
I don't spend hours, weeks looking for, do they accept my currency where I'm going? You
Hmm.
know, how am I gonna, get this thing done? That time that we've saved enables us to actually live our lives. If you look at our ancestors, it was trade by barter, it was very, very, very cumbersome ways of
Travel.
payment.
Remember,
Yeah,
some of my first travel, even within the U.S., they had something called a traveler's check, and it was a piece of paper, and American Express had it, and one of the taglines was "Don't leave home without it," but you'd have to sign the check, and then you'd sign it again, countersign it, and it's what's impressed me with a lot of African product development is something you mentioned, really leapfrogging, that it didn't necessarily have to go through each of the stage of evolution. It's like how messages or mail were delivered in the U.S. You had Pony Express and then telegraph and then the postal system, and now we have WhatsApp and TikTok and all kinds of digital, and it's changing, and you have to adapt. But then I think you come back to this point of how it's helped people day to day, the use cases that have come out of that. Um, so that was
precisely.
it brought back, I can remember that travel, writing those traveler's checks and
No, and if you lost it, you're in trouble. It just wasn't. I mean, but what choice did you have? So now people forget about those days. I mean, the Gen Zers that are growing up now, I mean, they just take all of this stuff for granted. But really, we've come really far and I do want to stress that what we do actually helps people to live better lives
Mhm.
because you don't have to think about how you're going to pay or can you pay. You can pay, whether you want to use a card, you want to do a wire transfer, you want to do whatever, form it takes, there is a solution that works. And I think the card is probably the most ubiquitous tool that we have from a digital banking standpoint. Because with a card, you can actually go virtually anywhere in the world
Mhm.
and be guaranteed that you'll find a place where you can either use the card on a POS or take money out from an ATM.
Right.
And that is so, so, so powerful. It's so powerful. So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah, we've had times with GTP and our prepaid card. Many trips, I that's what I had. I took my card. I didn't worry about changing money. There's trips where I it was all digital. Maybe saving, having some, I guess for tipping, that was about it. But it's very liberating, and it gives you confidence. You're not worried about what happens because you have protection.
exactly. Because you're certain. And I think, I mean, that's one of the things that at GTB, our card always works. One of our colleagues, David, always used to say that, the executives at the bank will always tell him, I always travel with your card because it always works.
Right.
I mean, so you are an American coming to Africa, you know, so you also want a card that works, right? Well, but I'm an African going to
Mhm.
the West,
Right.
I don't know anyone there. So I want to make sure that the card I have actually does work.
Mhm.
Because it's very important. It can be embarrassing if you use it, especially sometimes the debit cards don't work as well, depending on the time of day. Maybe they're running end of day, especially in the old days where the systems weren't as up to date as they are now. So
Mhm.
when you're a bank and you're running end of day services, it basically turns off all your online applications. So if you're trying to use your card then, it's not going to work. So yeah, it's great to have, a tool that wherever you are in the world, it's going to work.
Now you mentioned how did you find Dave Dearman and Serge Doe and GTP?
No, so yeah, so I was working in a bank then called UBA in Nigeria. And so I think this was 2009, 10 or thereabouts. So GTP had sold their solution to a bank in Burkina Faso called BIB.
Mhm.
Uh, Now UBA had acquired that bank, and because of that acquisition, the guys in the group in Nigeria got wind of this product that these guys were running in Burkina Faso BIB called Africards. And so the group said, "You guys bring them over here. Let's understand what it is." Because I mean, it was new, and they were making quite a bit of money from it.
Mhm.
So I mean, long story short, they sold, you know, the solution to the group that, we're going to start doing prepaid for the group. And at that time, I was working in cards in UBA. So it was basically my role to sort of roll it out across. Then UBA had 12 affiliates.
Mhm.
So that's how I got to meet David Eamon, Serge Doe, Bill Merrill, Dave Shonak, all the old gang. That's how we met. So
Mhm.
I was basically, a client
Right.
of GTPs, as it were.
Mhm.
So that's how the relationship started. And it evolved. We set up all of UBA, and we went on. And then I left UBA, went, to another bank. And, then, I mean, I kept in touch with David, and Serge. We would talk from time to time. And then, Dave reached out to me, and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone in boots on the ground, as it were, in Nigeria, and in other parts of Africa as well. Would you be interested in, being our guy there?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I think the reason why was because, the interaction I've had with GTP, I mean, they were good people, Bob and everyone else there. They were good people. And when I met yourself as well, so it was a no-brainer for me to say yes. I'll join the GTP team. And yeah, so that was, so slightly over 10 years ago, yeah, so
Right, right. So you joined, and yeah, and I joined maybe a couple years later. You might have been, I joined
yeah, I
2014,
joined in, I think 2013, I think 2013, I think I joined 2013, I think, yeah.
but I do remember had some contact with UBA before that, and a short story about a fellow SIA. Uh,
Yeah, Day
yeah,
SA. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he would send these emails, and it was like urgent, and they'd be in red font and bold. Richard, we need your help. I need a strategy tomorrow. It's like, and
Oh,
what
welcome to Africa.
welcome to Africa, South, and to Nigeria particularly.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I remember that was with Visa I was traveling, and
Mhm.
first trip there. They were American company. You had security there, and I was supposed to wait for somebody called the major, I think. And I got there, and you talk about not only cards, but my phone. Not all you needed different SIM cards, whatever. So I was like, I'm waiting inside the terminal until the major comes, and then the major comes, and he was shorter than me, and I figured, well, if that's the level of security I need, then there's no problem. And then I came back a couple
Oh
of
my
years
God.
later and traveling with you all, with you and Dave and the others, I felt comfortable. You have to be aware. But what was great is you had with GTP always somebody that understood the local market. And that's really a key value add you had. I would come to you really to help me understand, the business culture because it is
Yeah, yeah.
different. And you were really a great translator of that. So.
No, I think you bring a very good point. If you want to do business in Africa, you're actually doing business with people. It's key. When you do business in Africa, you're doing business with people.
Mhm.
And it helps when you have people on the ground that understand the market, that can introduce you to the different nuances. I mean, the joke you talked about SAE. So Nigerians are very, very different from Ghanaians, very
Mhm.
different from, Congolese or Cote d'Ivoire.
Right.
So we have we tend to be quite aggressive, in our approach. We want to get things done yesterday. We're always in a hurry. So those are things you need to understand. Even in the email etiquette, email culture, things that, for example, I send you an email, I expect an immediate response
Right.
because that's our culture. Whereas in the States, I can respond in 24 hours or 48 hours, and you wouldn't think there's anything wrong with that. But
Mhm.
we're thinking, why is this guy sleeping?
Right.
So, it really does help if you want to come to Africa to get people on the ground that can sort of handhold you, take you and let you understand how the terrain, how the terrain is laid down,
Mhm.
whether it's through West Africa, and it's very different. The West African culture, even within West Africa, is different. You go to East Africa, I went to a country, Malawi,
Mhm.
and I mean, it's so laid back,
Mhm.
extremely laid back. These are guys that everyone closes for lunch
Mhm.
and goes for lunch in a bank. Everyone just basically goes to lunch, things that are unheard of where I'm coming from. And then you go to a place like Kenya, and they're also quite, Kenya's an aggressive place as well in East
Right.
Africa.
Right.
So it really helps if you're able to work with people who are, native
Mhm.
to where you want to do business, because it will save you a lot of mistakes and it will help you to open a lot of doors as well and get you further along the line. Yeah.
Agreed, agreed. And it was again, it's not. I think Dave Deeren would say this as well. Didi, that it's not the United States of Africa. You have 54 countries
It is. It is.
and
It is.
different languages, different cultures, different. Just a thought, on the business, we had a lot of success in Francophone West Africa. Very different type of business models and pricings
Exactly.
compared to Kenya, where M-Pesa ruled, and East Africa, Kenya, MNOs, the telcos
Hmm.
versus banks. And that was a great value add you brought as well to understand that. And I thought one of your strengths was you could, a common language everybody understood was your business model, the financial, okay? How do we make money in this?
Exactly. But at the end of the day, that's what people want. People want, how does this product help me to make money?
Yep.
And I think that's something that we've been able to sort of display to our clients to show them that, hey, look, working with us, because when you're talking to banks are like, they want to increase customer base, they want to make money. So how does your product help me to do that? So we show them, how it does. And that's kind of like why we've always got the buy-in, when they see, the dollar signs, they're like,
Right.
yes, we want to work with people like that who understand that is the bottom line at the end of the day. It's not just that the product is nice, but it helps me meet my own personal, KPIs
Right.
and organizational one as well. And one of the things I always tell people is that, the product that, specific to us, the prepaid product, if done right, a lot of people in the banks used it to gain promotions, because it was a flagship, for most of the banks that we operated in, because the product was doing well. And if you're the guy at the desk, obviously, upwardly mobile as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it would be. And I remember we would show, and it was stunning with some of the banks just how important prepaid was to P&Ls. It would move the needle at a corporate level.
Exactly. Exactly. And what you said about the Francophone West Africa is so key because, we found out that they were selling cards for $15, $20. Whereas in where I'm from, Nigeria, people would shoot you if you wanted to sell cards for that
Right,
because,
right.
the culture is very, very different, but, people were willing to pay for it there. Whereas in East Africa, like you said, M-Pesa was so strong. So the cards was very difficult to gain traction because you could do everything with M-Pesa. The only thing you couldn't do is, spend money abroad or online transactions, But yeah, yeah. So it's been wonderful. And I think one of the things that you said about Africa being 54 markets, when people say, what's your Africa strategy? I'm always like, Africa is not one country, you
Right.
can't, you have an Africa strategy, but part of what working with, GTP now on Afrique is that because, we're in 40 different countries.
Right.
So if you do have a Pan-African strategy, you want, a partner that can actually take you to all these markets.
Right.
So I mean that's one of the value adds, one of the major value adds that we have. Whereas, if you want to, whether it's West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, we have a footprint there and we can help you,
Right.
to sort of, land on the ground, as it were.
I have something I call, I guess I'll call it the Anison philosophy around your business model or use cases that all partners have to earn money. You can't earn money from each other. You've got to have enough coming from the product, from the market. So everybody, the customer sees value, you see value, your partners, because otherwise it's not sustainable. And maybe you can talk a bit about and you know what? You have a plan, but then I remember Mike Tyson said, "Yeah, everybody has a plan until when you come in
Until
the
you
ring, until you
get
get smashed in the face, and then plans change." And that was a great strength of you, and I think our team was able to adapt. But I remember, products where it was renegotiated multiple times until we hit it right.
yeah, I mean, so sometimes you can, and I think in the early days, you could say that maybe the knowledge of the product wasn't as much there in terms of the clients, so they didn't really understand. But ultimately, for sustainability, everybody has to make money, right? Everybody has to make money. And I can truly say that, with the GTP, we've not lost any client, because of pricing or anything like that. We've lost some because the bank went under, or a regulatory, issue that said, maybe you can't issue prepaid cards anymore.
Yeah.
So what we realize is that, look, if they can make money consistently,
Mhm.
it pays us, So that's why, we spent a lot of time working with them to improve their product, to
Mhm.
show them how to make money from this product.
Mhm.
Because, we realize that, if we don't do that, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Because, their struggle. I mean, look, you have different types of banks. You have
Mhm.
some banks who really understand this product, right? They're good, they get it, they can do, very little hand holding. And you have the middle ones, and then you have the other ones who really don't have a clue. They just know that they want a product. So, when you're able to sort of give them a template and you show them, just a rough P&L guide, show them, look, if you have this type of input, this is the output that you'll get. And their eyes light up and they say, oh, so this is how we can make money from this product. So
Right.
it's really been rewarding when you see banks start, on partners.
Mhm.
I know we talk about banks, but a lot of the stuff we do now as well is with fintechs as well.
Right.
Because, in Africa now, if you look at MSMEs or SMEs, there
Mhm.
are more SMEs than, there are millions of them across Africa. And that's really the lifeblood of Africa. So the way that you can enable them to come into the formal payment ecosystem is also through some of the solutions that we have,
Right.
whether it's prepaid cards, whether it's mobile money, whether it's, remittance and things like that. So, it's been really key to basically, and if you look at one of the things that our mantras in Onafriq is making borders matter less.
Mhm.
Africa has a lot of artificial borders. So what we do is by providing payment rails so that people can actually pay and be paid,
Right.
you know. So whether it's via mobile money, whether it's cards, whether it's remittance, we're basically a network of networks. So you can use our network, pick and choose what you want to get to where you want to get to, and go ahead. Yeah.
I think really, and part of that, playing off the analogy a bit more with borders, bridges. You've been great at building bridges. A couple thoughts around that. One is just managing the bridge between a U.S. based company out of that megalopolis Tulsa, rivaling Lagos in terms of complexity, or at least how did you manage that? And business wise, time wise, you were the person that never slept. It's like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was so initially I think that the first thing was understanding, I mean, the US culture, right? I mean, I understood our culture and it's now understanding the US culture, how do they work, So it's very different from, our culture. So it was now, like you said, being a bridge between us
Mhm.
or our clients, and the US team. So, and there's about a 7 hour difference.
Right.
So, so most of the time I ended up working till, late hours of the day just to make sure that we could, translate, the requests of our
Yeah.
clients to, and I think one of the things that, because I was a client,
Hmm.
so I have that unique perspective. I actually used, the GTP solutions. So
Right.
I know what clients want. I know what they need. I know their pain points. So,
Hmm.
sometimes the guys, in Tulsa were a bit, why is this guy, who is he working
Right.
for? Is he working for us or is he working for them?
Right. Right.
Because I always advocated, we need to get this thing done because I understood the pressure that, our clients were under.
Hmm.
But no, I think we've also evolved as well as GTP in terms of, and we did that because we'd actually bring people in market.
Right.
You can be a solution provider out of the States,
Hmm.
Europe, but you've never actually been on ground to see how your solution is used,
Right.
the people how they actually in, and it gives you a very different perspective of the market,
Mhm.
of the need. And it's something I would, advise to anyone that wants to come, into Africa as well. Actually come yourself, see it for yourself, see how people actually use it, and it will actually help you in understanding the market and bettering the solution that you provide as well. Yeah.
And a couple other bridges to talk about, maybe touch on. One is, we mentioned when GTP started, it was a bank focus, and then we moved more to fintechs program management. What was important about that difference? How did we have to change? How did you change the approach?
So I mean, one of the things that we noticed, and I think it was because of one of the banks that we had, which is UBA, was that it was something called co-brand. So co-brand is when, a non-bank entity wants to issue cards,
Hmm.
and only banks are allowed by law to issue cards in Africa. So they need to partner with a bank to be able to issue maybe, a payroll card, a
Hmm.
store card, a student university card, whatever card it is, you needed to partner with a bank. And we started noticing that, this bank was getting a lot of these requests, to actually issue these co-branded cards, which meant that there were a lot of like entities, non-bank entities on the continent that actually had a need for cards.
Hmm.
So, in the old days, we used to call them program managers. Now you call them fintechs. So they started off being program managers, and part of why it was successful was because of the platform that we had.
Hmm.
From the onset, our platform was basically agency enabled.
Hmm.
Agency banking is key because how many branches can a bank have?
Hmm.
You know, but you need agents can go much further. So in a country like Nigeria, we have a lot of banks, but
Hmm.
not but across Africa, that's not the same. So in the capital, you may have a lot of bank branches, but when you go into the hinterlands, you don't have them. So agents become extremely, necessary. So
Hmm.
because our platform was agent enabled, it actually enabled the banks to work with these fintechs because you could
Hmm.
actually deploy the solution on a laptop. All you needed was internet banking,
Hmm.
and you were there and you were off and running. So, that was, one of the key things that started shifting our focus from being a bank centric,
Hmm.
um, you know, processor to a more of, an all centric one.
Right.
So we now started actually targeting these fintechs ourselves
Hmm.
and going after them because we had what they needed.
Hmm.
We have the relationship with the banks.
Right.
We call a bin. Every bank has a bin, which is
Hmm.
what you issue your cards on. So we had that relationship. And the fintechs needed a bin from a bank. So we now became not the middleman, but the connector. Okay.
Hmm.
So we'd go out and look for these fintech businesses, we'd bring them and take them to the bank. Because otherwise, it was very difficult for them to talk to banks on their own. They don't know how to talk to banks.
Right.
So we basically demystified all of that, how to handle banks, how there was a framework, we had
Hmm.
agreements that were basically, cut and paste. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think that really helped us. And what also happened was that banks now relied on us to bring them business.
Right.
Because let me give an example. I was working in the bank. Now, I know how much effort I need to put in to sell one card,
Hmm.
from a branch. It takes a lot. But you partner with a fintech that
Hmm.
has in his own or in their own ecosystem 5,000 customers, 10,000 customers.
Right.
And by signing that one deal,
Hmm.
you get 10,000 cards. I mean, it's a no-brainer for the bank,
Right.
So, and I mean, it's evolved. And now today, like you said, we're in 40 markets. So a lot of people come to us
Hmm.
because of that unique, position
Hmm.
where we're in, where we can connect them to bin sponsors across, the African
Hmm.
continent. Yeah.
And now, with Onafriq, some more bridges to build, connections to make, a partner now over the acquired GTP. They've built on a MNO wallet, mobile wallet network, extensive throughout Africa, connecting with a payment network, Visa, MasterCard. Um, how have you navigated that over the past, I
Yeah.
guess, 2+ years now?
So, the acquisition, naturally, when there's an acquisition, people are wondering what's going on. How is it going to affect the business? Is the business going to remain? The reason, not the reason, but one of the major reasons why Onafriq acquired GTP was because of the cards, because of the spread that we had across Africa.
Right.
So Onafriq, simply put, is one of the biggest mobile money payment aggregators on the continent.
Hmm.
So we're connected to over 500 million mobile wallets,
Hmm.
meaning we can push money into a wallet or take money off a wallet,
Hmm.
okay, in Africa. Okay. Now, you have 500 million wallets,
Hmm.
okay, and then you have cards. The thing about prepaid is that you have to put money onto the card, right? Before you can spend it. Otherwise, it's blank. And there are standard ways to do this. You walk into an agent location or a branch and you load it. So you have to get into your car, drive across town to look for a bank. Very cumbersome. Okay. The second option is you can fund the card directly from your bank account.
Right.
Either using internet banking or mobile app, using
Hmm.
APIs that we provide. But as we know in Africa, more people have wallets than
Right.
bank accounts. So, at 500 million wallets, probably, less than 100 million bank accounts. So the vision was connecting the wallets to the card
Hmm.
across Africa. And that is actually something that we've started rolling out. Today we have a solution called Easy Transfer, where you can actually move money from your mobile wallet to your card.
Right.
So I don't necessarily need to have a bank account with that bank. What that means is that your cards can be bought by anyone, and the
Mhm.
flexibility is there because once I have a wallet, I can just top it up
Sure.
whether I'm in the country or out of the country,
Hmm.
and I top up my card and I'm good to go. So yeah, so Onafriq is like I said, traditionally in the M&O business, and now the cards have come in as well, as part of the other products that we do. But it's more of providing, about four key products,
Hmm.
that anyone wants to do because payments is about paying and being paid.
Right.
So we have the connectivity to the wallets, we have the cards, and the clients that we work with, you have the remittance companies, you have banks, you have MNOs, you have enterprises. Enterprise is anyone who, wants to either pay someone or wants to
Right.
receive payments. So you take, like a Netflix, subscription payments, those are
Right.
the kind of things that we also facilitate as well, across the continents as well. Yeah.
Yeah, some really great integrate. It's developing. It's still emerging. Yet you have some unique characteristics. Being in 40+ markets, that diversification adds complexity, but also I think mitigates risk, creates new opportunities, and then the product mix. And if perhaps, focus in on Nigeria, where Onafriq has, both issuing and the merchant side of the business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you might just talk a little bit about that. It's, you know, uh, for the four major markets I focus on in fintech, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, but Nigeria, it's, the biggest population, but very, very challenging, big opportunity. How do you navigate that, or how do you see the market today? Used to joke about another
Yeah.
market, one of the bricks called Brazil, like, it's always on the verge of, greatness, but tomorrow never comes. How's Nigeria look to you today from
No,
your
I mean,
perspective?
Nigeria is, you can't ignore it because of the size, the sheer size of
Right.
Nigeria. But it's also important to understand, what kind of product you want
Uh,
to roll out or the service that you want to do, because that's key. So today, I mean, you have a lot of regulation. You need to get licenses to do so
mhm.
many different things if you want to be a fintech, in
Right.
Nigeria as well. And then you also have the FX play, because
Yeah.
the currency has been devalued, so it's difficult to get the money out of the country as well. So those are the things you need to consider, because yes, you can make money in Nigeria. Let's say you make money in naira now, you need to convert it
Mhm.
to USD or euro or
Mhm.
whatever it is, and then you need to repatriate that. And
Mhm.
because of the difference in exchange rates, you have the official exchange rates, then you
Mhm.
have the unofficial one. So you won't be able to access the official one to repatriate your funds.
Right.
There's certain fixed things that you can access the official rate for, from the central bank.
Right.
The rest of us have to go, to the open market to look for funds. And there can be, sometimes 20, 30, 40% difference between,
Yeah.
the central bank rate and the unofficial rate. So
Mhm.
those are things that people need to consider a lot. But with that being said, Nigeria is still a place that you can make a lot of money if you
Yeah.
have the right product. You have distribution as well.
Mhm.
Distribution is key. Fortunately, we have very young population, so that's why you see a lot of people, you have direct sales agents who are selling
Mhm.
from, FMCG goods to,
Right.
even digital products, even now, and the uptake of, smartphones is also increased.
Yeah.
So people can actually deploy things on apps, and that way you can reach, a lot more people. The cost of internet is still high, but it's it's
Mhm.
it's coming down. Oh, although um I just heard that the government approved a price hike of 50%
Ah.
on all telecommunications. So
Mhm.
that's going to go up, which will affect everything,
Yeah.
because everything is linked to telecommunications now. So the cost of everything will go up, cost of transactions will go up,
Mhm.
but yeah, so that's just something that just happened, I think, this week or last week as well.
Right. Right. No, it's a vibrant, very entrepreneurial society, and remarked, how well the diaspora has done. Yeah, I was talking before with some friends, and about how I enjoy Nigerian food, and talked about my favorite is pepper soup, and that there, where you've taken me, Dave Dearman making some really great chicken pepper soup, but some great restaurants in Houston. He's like, Houston. Well, Houston, I know certainly in the US, it's got the largest Nigerian diaspora. And
Yeah,
it is a very successful population. The Rockefeller Foundation studied 15 different immigrant groups, and Nigerian were top based on, career, based on education, and based on income. The average, I think the median income for a Nigerian immigrant is higher than the U.S. average. So it's a
yeah,
group that's done very well, and looking for ties, and seeing how some of those, I think it'll be, and I'm kind of looking ahead, something I want to cover over this year, maybe more, is, Africa, Nigeria is a great example, like, reflecting a lot of the core issues or opportunities in Africa fintech. It's tough to navigate. It's not a straight line. You need resilience. You need perseverance. And one of the things I'm looking at is, I'll tell another story. And I'll get to my point, then I'll hand it back to you for maybe a close. I've kept you for quite a while. I'm really enjoying this, Ike. It's great to reconnect. But early on, when I joined, my first contact with Africa was working for Visa and based in Dubai, and I would travel to cities like Dakar and Cape Town. I said, wow, look at all these tourists coming in from around the world. This is great. It brings money in. Then I'd go back to Dubai in like 2012, 13, 14, very few sub-Saharan Africans there. Then 16, 17, 18, you'd start to see Nigerian, South African, Kenyan working in hotels, restaurants. And then I noticed after COVID and travel, there were a lot more sub-Saharan Africans in, but you know what? They weren't working in the restaurant, they were touring. And that was important because that meant you had a population that was succeeding and had the
Yeah.
income to travel. And I want to kind of leave as a final question for me is, thought on, to me, a measure I'm looking for is when, African fintechs are selling into other markets, that they have customers in the Americas, in Europe, in Asia. And I think it'll come from areas where there's great innovation, mobile wallets, micro lending. I think M-Pesa is the most successful mobile wallet in the world, not just Africa. Some of your thoughts about what happens next, and some
I
of the
think I
things you're
think it's
looking for to come out of Africa.
no, that's a good question actually. I think look at what actually happened with Onafriq and GTP.
Yes,
So
yes,
Onafriq is an
yep,
African company. Yeah,
yep,
they acquired a US a US company, which is what GTP was,
yep,
something that never been done before. So that was unique.
yep,
But the point you're asking about in terms of can our products scale outside beyond Africa?
mhm,
So today we do have, VC funding, equity funding from US into African companies. I mean, you can name a few.
right,
Now, can the solutions that we have actually be things that we can, transport back to the US or to Europe?
yep,
So I think maybe that's the next
right,
level we need to take. Because right now, the solutions have been transported across Africa.
right,
We've already basically conquered Africa. I mean, Onafriq is an example. We have 40 markets.
yep,
You have the likes of Paystack. You have the likes
yep,
of, so many other InterSwitch and things like
right,
that are pan-African. So can we take, innovative solutions to other parts of,
mhm,
and I think it has to do with really um, people having that focus to say, I can actually go outside of the continent.
right,
I don't think, you know, too many are thinking along that line
mhm,
yet. But just as we said, in the US, even today, your payment network isn't as advanced as what
right,
we have in Nigeria. It isn't as advanced.
yep,
So there are countries that, are maybe 10 years behind where we are.
yep,
Can we take our solutions to them and say, hey, look, we can help you deploy something like this. I mean, for example, I was part of a consortium that went to another African country,
mhm,
and we were basically selling, what we had in Nigeria, to
yep,
their government to say, hey,
mhm,
look, we already have it, we can just plug it in and play. But yeah, I think that might be the next frontier where, someone in Saudi Arabia is advanced. Someone different parts of the world in Asia and different,
mhm,
parts of the world are actually using, solutions that have been developed by African fintechs because we are very advanced and some of the things that we're doing are far,
mhm.
far ahead of,
Sure.
other areas.
No, and I think you'd be a great person to do that. You've got the background, and if you need something here, I mean, there's this model will actually fit very well with the Trump, come to America, but you need to have something here in the U.S. Well, GTP on
Yeah,
Africa, we're ahead of that by 5 years, so
exactly,
we'll see.
exactly.
Well, this is
Yeah.
great. I want to thank you, Ike. It's been too long since we
No,
last talked, but this
thank
is
you so
great.
much.
Great insights. Just
Thank you.
Like I said, truly a leader and just a good person. You need that. Thank you, Ike.
Oh, likewise. No, really been my pleasure. Great catching up. And yeah, I hope the podcast and everything you're doing is very successful. And we'll definitely be in touch as the weeks and months progress.
That's for sure. You take care. Be well, Ike.
Okay, you too. Take care.